now you want to move everything with proper weather.
This is going to mostly be this bar, but as soon as
you can click on the green part and
green part here. It's not green.
and red.
Oh, the red part? No, the red part. Sorry, it's okay. It'll go away. Promise. Okay, so thank you all for being here. The story of how this all happened was Gary sent out a message saying there are 2 open flash slots, one on Friday and one next week. And I had just prepared some materials for Laurie Kletzer, the new AVC of development at UCSC, Priya Mehta, PK Agarwal. There was some high-level discussion about what the home of this, where the home of this work should be at UCSC. Since I had these materials ready, I wrote back to Gary to say I can do either week, but by that time next week was taken. So here I am. Thank you for being here. I know this is a busy week with finals coming up next week and grading and all that. So I'm going to talk about the CrEST umbrella of initiatives that I've been working on with Sierra Schneider, Christy Toll, who is not here, but at UCSC, and Carolyn Roosevelt. CrEST is this logo over here that I'm very proud of. I don't know if you can see the words, the letters CREST written across. People have accused me of writing in Japanese when they see this logo, but it's not. It's written in English. And there are logos for 9 of the 11 things that are under this umbrella. And it has this bold thing of creating equity in STEAM. So let me say a little bit about that. That's what CrEST stands for, creating equity in STEAM. I'm going to talk about why we want to do this at all, why I want to do this at all. I want to tell you a little story about the Indian cricket team. I'm a sports fan, and I love watching all kinds of sports. I like playing all kinds of sports. And I'm a cricket fanatic. I wasted so much of my youth watching sports. Still waste a lot of my adult life watching sports. The Indian cricket team sucked when I was growing up. So you'd go spend the whole day watching, 5 days watching a test match, only to come back in heartbreak, disappointment, and you knew this was going to happen going in, right? Because they were a pathetic team. Now, this was all through the 60s and 70s. And one thing that could be said about the Indian team, 2 things that could be said. If they were going to play a match, they were going to lose. That was one thing that could be said. You know, the standard thing was they couldn't catch the ball. The only thing they could catch was a cold. That's the only thing the Indian cricket team could do. And that was one thing, you're guaranteed to lose. The other thing that was guaranteed was they were all very well spoken. So when people interviewed them about the loss afterward, each and every one of the 11 members of the team spoke the Queen's English. Now, these are all Indian cricketers grown up in India. How come they spoke the Queen's English with such clarity? You don't need to speak English well to fling your body across the air and catch a ball. You know, those two things are not related, those 2 skills. So in 1983, India had a cricket captain, that's named Kapil Dev, who couldn't string together a single sentence of English. There was sort of some embarrassment around this. He was the captain of the team, he was very talented, but they needed a translator every time he had to speak to the media after a match. In 1983, India went on to win the World Cup for the first time. It's not a coincidence that the first time India opened its cricketing doors to a wider talent pool in the country, they became world beaters. They've been world beaters since then. And now most of the team can't speak a single sentence of English, which is fine. They're still beating the rest of the world. So I want to say this about the diversity and excellence. And they're not different things. In one case, you're tapping into a portion of the talent pool. In the other case, you're tapping into all of the talent pool. This could be said of the Brazilian soccer team. Almost every member of every Brazilian soccer team had only one name per player, not 2 names. And almost all of them grew up in the favelas of the big cities, Sao Paulo and Rio. So Brazil realized this long before the Brazilian soccer realized this long before Indian cricket did. I've also come to the realization, perhaps everyone has, that if we're working to diversify our institutions, UCSC in this case, our department, depending on how you define your institution, you can't just work inside it. You can't expect that everyone who applies to come to your institution, faculty applicants, grad applicants, undergraduate applicants, you can't expect that the pool of people who come to you to be as diverse as society itself. You have to work outside your institution to diversify the inside. These two things, again, are connected. We've all been in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, but I want to talk about a different pandemic today. We saw in the politics of the country a couple of years ago, politics of the world around us, that there was a serious erosion of the notion of evidence-based thinking, listening to the loudest voice rather than the voice of a person with expertise, something we've all experienced, And this pandemic is as much of a killer as COVID-19. It's as silent, as insidious. It's been going on longer than the biological pandemic, as far as we know. And unlike COVID-19, where the people who are most at risk are the elderly, you start by vaccinating them. But the information pandemic, you might want to start with the youngest people because they're going to live with this disease the longest if you don't. I've been thinking about, and many of us have been thinking about, what's the vaccination in this case? What's the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine for the information pandemic? And I think the answer is it's involving young people in critical thinking in things that they love to do anyway. So using what they love to do anyway as the sugar coating, but the bitter pill inside is critical thinking. So, and one thing that makes me guilty personally when I do this work is STEM is the only thing I'm trained to do. And that's what I'm bringing to communities of children, educators. But I realize what I'm bringing is a long game. It's not the short game that is perhaps of more immediate concern. Hunger, poverty, war. Those are immediate threats in many communities, in the most marginalized communities. And what this is bringing is not the immediate need, and I feel guilty about that, but I'm not trained often to bring the immediate needs. I'm not trained to bring the short game. I'm trained to bring the long game. STEM is, STEM equity is a long game in this sense. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm going to move on even if it doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to make sense of STEAM, categories of STEAM activities. This is something I've made up, it's not borrowed from anywhere. It's for thinking in terms of this ramp. You notice the gray gets a deeper and deeper shade because it's deeper and deeper engagement in STEAM. And the first of these is having access to the people and process of science. Very often the way science gets reported in the press, you see the end product. You often don't even see, you might see people sometimes, mention of people. You rarely see the process. You rarely see the many times that failed before you got to the final result. And for me personally, this access happened in a couple of ways. Visit to the planetarium, watching David Attenborough's Life on Earth, which is very much about people and the process of science. But this is a passive activity. You don't have to do anything except pay attention. If you want to do something, you have to build skills. So to participate, you need to build some skills. And at Santa Cruz, I was first introduced to high school students doing research through something that I would call controlled or prescriptive in the Cosmos program, where I would take projects that my PhD students and I had already done, and I would give them to high school students to do again. But I could control the degree of difficulty by controlling how much instruction I gave them or not. It's like navigation instructions. If you want to make it hard for someone to reach you, you don't give them navigation instructions. If you want to make it easy, you tell them all the twists and turns in the road. So you can control the level of guidance and you can control the degree of difficulty of the journey. But one thing that isn't part of this necessarily is the notion of failure, because it's a path you've gone down. So you can let someone else take the path with the knowledge that there is a path from the beginning to the end. Most of the research we do, of course, is open-ended, where you try something and fail, and you learn from productive failure. And so I see this kind of progression. And with this in mind, I love crosswords, love Scrabble. So what we're trying to do, is create equity in STEAM. When I say we're trying to do, I don't think this is going to be achieved in our lifetimes. It's not going to be achieved by any one person or organization, but we're really working towards creating equity in STEAM rather than. That's what the crosswords are. And the way I've been thinking about this is the method are the words that run from top to bottom. And this is by engaging young people in critical thinking in the context of open-ended research, while they're being closely mentored by experts in that field of research. Again, it starts by, if you can't take a young person and plunge them into the ocean and expect them to swim. You want to start by having them dip their toes in the water. You want them to get close enough to the water so they know whether the water temperature feels right. And more importantly, you want them to decide whether the people who are already in the water are people they want to associate with. So it's the people and the process you want to introduce them to. And so we've started something called Shadow the Scientist. I'll just quickly name the initiatives and I'll describe some of them in detail. Once you decide, yes, the water feels great, and I want to be like those cool people who are already in the water, you want to learn the swim strokes. And we've been teaching Python in the context of astronomy research. And one of my colleagues has been teaching R in the context of computational biology research. Am I blocking a lot of the screen by standing where I go? Okay. Okay. Once you have learned how to swim, you're ready to take a deep dive. Sierra, Carolyn, and I work on the science internship program. I'll say a little bit about it. It's going into its 14th year. And I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with Professor Annette Lee, Arizona State University now. She used to be at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, on a project called We Are Stardust, which is also a deep dive, but it's intersectional. So the intersection of art, science, and culture. Science internship program, even though it's a science internship program, it's actually in all 5 divisions at UCSC: social sciences, humanities, arts, engineering, PV sci. Now, what happens after someone takes this deep plunge? We want to think about how they can pay it forward. So after you've been an intern, benefiting from these opportunities, we want you to be able to pay it forward. SPHERE stands for STEM Program for High Schoolers Engaging in Research Early. What the AAS is to astronomy researchers and educators, SPHERE is to those who engage high school students in research. It's a community of practice. It's a forum where you can come together and talk about challenges and rewards. You don't, trying to not have this activity be siloed. We have an alumni buddies program. We have a trajectories thing. We have teachers engaged in the science internship program. That's what TSEP is. We have a peer-to-peer college and career network, mostly volunteer, all entirely volunteer. And then we have community college students in SIP. The teachers in SIP is through a partnership with Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, a program called the STAR program, Science, STEM Teacher and Researcher Program, sorry. It's getting ahead of me. So the Cal Poly program called STAR, STEM Teacher and Researcher, give research experiences to undergraduates who are getting teaching credentials to go teach in high school. So they come to SIP, they work with undergraduates and high school students in SIP, and then they go off and translate some of this work into mostly Title I classrooms around the country. So STAR is a nationwide program. And CSIP is very local. We're working with one community college, Foothill College in Los Altos, and they've been sending, this year will be the biggest, where community college students will be participating in the full range of subjects in SIP. I won't say very much about these two anymore, but let me now talk about a couple of these. Shadow the Scientist. So Shadow the Scientist is very much a COVID-19 innovation. Those of you who are observers, astronomy observers in the room or in the Zoom call, know that there's this new mode of observing called pajama mode. You know, before you could go to the telescope when you had time on the telescope, you'd show up on the mountaintop, use the telescope. That still exists, that possibility exists, although it was shut down for COVID-19 briefly. Observatories are reopening. You could also go to your home institution, UCSC, operate the telescopes from a remote observing room. We did that for a while. Both of these opportunities were cut off in the spring of 2020 when COVID-19 really hit the US. Hawaii, Mount Hamilton, those are the telescopes shown here. Hawaii on the upper left, Mount Hamilton in the lower right. And pajama mode observing was born. This is a mode where you don't need to get into your street clothes to use the telescope. I've sat on that couch for 2 years, this couch that my family lovingly calls the Great Depression, because that's what the shape of the couch has become. So now I can observe from that. And that's what we've been doing. So last Friday, for example, we were on the Keck telescope, Keck 2 telescope in ESI, observing, getting spectra from the most distant known Milky Way halo RLR, between 100 and 150 kiloparsecs from us. And this is an approved Keck program. This was our second night of this semester doing this. The first night was in February. So we're doing this on March 4th. And our team of scientists, there were 3 people on the East Coast, or 1 person in Santa Cruz, I was in Los Altos. We were on Zoom connecting, and we were using VNC, virtual network computing, to control. One of us was using it to control the Keck telescope in ESI spectrograph, and we were sharing our screen. And we had planned this so that we would open up our Zoom room, not the observatory's Zoom, but a separate Zoom link to the world. So we had participants from Alpha Cent, thanks to Cesar. This is an outreach group in Central America. We had an outreach group in Kosovo. We had a group in, we are partners with a group in Zimbabwe. I know Knowledge is on the Zoom call. I'll introduce him at the end of the talk. We've had groups in Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico, Svea Hernandez. We've had Native Hawaiian groups, various schools and organizations in Hawaii. And the irony of this is the telescopes in Hawaii. The kids are in Hawaii. The kids have never been up to Mauna Kea. They're further away, figuratively, from that telescope than I am sitting here in California. So we're trying to change that. We're trying to change that for this Shadow the Scientist program. So there were lots of people connected from Hawaii. And the idea is, in Shadow the Scientist, the idea is we don't perform. We do our science. It's not curated. It's not polished. The scientists do their science. If everything is going well, it's deadly boring, right? Because you're taking these long exposures. The instrument is working beautifully. No one's getting mad at anyone else. Things are smooth, right? It's when they're exciting that it's really bad for the experiment. That means the instrument isn't working, or the scientists aren't working, or both. So what we rely on is offering an authentic experience to anyone who cares. If we thought, this is going to be boring, no one's going to want to do this, but it's been successful, in high demand. And what participants get out of this is they get to see the people and process again. They get to see who does science, not just the result. They get to see how science gets done, how problem solving happens. They get to see some of the coolest toys on the planet, Keck telescope. They get to engage in some big questions, but I'm giving those in priority order. I think it's the people and process that people, and the authenticity of that people have been most attracted to. We've done this at Lick, done this at Keck. We've done this at Subaru. And this has become a little mini partnership where a Germany staff member, Germany North staff member, IFA, Institute for Astronomy on Manoa, Roy Gal. The 2 of them have been working with our team at Santa Cruz to say, let's take this to the directors all the observatories in Mauna Kea to say, we want to do this officially. We want your official sanction, blessings to do this. So this process is sort of unfolding. It started out as grassroots, but we want it to be sanctioned at the top. We'll go to UCO, NOAR lab next. And the idea is anyone who gets time can do this relatively easily. I'll say a little bit about our Python teaching tutorial. This is something we started as pure volunteer effort. We started this in person in an all-girls school in Palo Alto. We would just go and teach Python programming. It was set in the context of a relatively recent astronomy research article. One of my PhD students have written a paper, and I'll show you a little bit about that. So here's the paper. It's the paper by Claire Dorman. It's not so recent anymore. It's 7 years old. What Claire did was she took the plots in her paper and the code that generated these plots. And she took this and she took certain, they're all well-commented code, but she took certain lines of well-commented computer code and strategically removed them. So Notebook doesn't run anymore because you've removed some of the important lines of code, and the participants have to restore these lines. And there's no one way to do it. What you're doing effectively is you have the comment there still, so you're translating from English to Python. That's what a participant is doing. And we of course have worked out examples, and we offer these mentored sessions. We've done this we went online with this in 2018, and we've done this for well over 1,000 students, 1,500 students over the last now 3 and a bit years. We offer it every few months, do 2 3-hour sessions or 3 2-hour sessions, 6 hours of mentored work, and a lot of people participate asynchronously. We provide the materials, example, you have a graph like this, how do you change the labels? How do you change the formula? This is a pure Python example. So we have 6 notebooks, 2 of them are pure Python like this, and the remaining 4 are connected to that science article. Okay, these are the people. Claire started this, all her fault, and she's been a huge supporter of this. Emily Cunningham, another PhD student, took this over, and Amanda sort of taking the lead on this. After them, this has been the succession. Cesar has been involved, Doug, Kevin, Maddie, several people. Cesar, I think you offered instruction in Spanish on one occasion for students from the University of Costa Rica. And I just want to say that shout out to the scientists, PyaR. There's not a particular age group or demographic. It's really been open to all. For PyaR, we've had middle school students take part. The oldest participant was 72 years old. The youngest instructor was 18, high school student who was. So they're breaking a lot of stereotypes, but this is my baby, the science internship program. Co-parenting with Carolyn and Sierra, of course, but this has been running for years now, 13 years, it's going into its 14th. That's my daughter on the right. Those redwoods are real. And we used to have them in person, as you can see. The last 3 years, 20, 21, and 22, this year included, it's going to be purely online, no in-person projects, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. And what it is critical thinking in the context of open-ended research, but closely mentored. Tell you the story of Erica Escalona from Aptos High School. She liked chemistry in school, was too scared to apply to SIP as a rising junior. Some of her friends convinced her to do this. As a rising senior, she applied. Had a great time. It's not a classroom setting. Doing some experiments, chemistry and biochemistry department. She got early decision into Princeton and changed her life, changed her family's life. Her parents hadn't gone beyond elementary school, so it changed her life. It's an 8-week program. Mentors are signing up right now. Students are applying right now. This one is for high school students. It's a fee-based program, but about a third of our students are on need-based scholarships, and a smaller fraction than a third, probably less than 10% of our students have such dire financial circumstances that we pay stipends. So we pay stipends to the neediest of our students, make it revenue neutral for a third, and then the majority of our students pay tuition to be part of the program. Projects are real in the sense that they're not made up just for the high school students. Instead, they're pieces of existing research that typically a PhD student or postdoc might be planning for the summer. These are the 21 departments in which we've been over the many years of the program. Last summer, 2021, there was no economics and there was no METOX, microbiology and environmental toxicology. Most of these are departments on campus, some are not. Some are like applied artificial intelligence is a program. Art, culture, and STEM is something new that started last year. That's that intersectional thing I was talking about. I think everything else is a regular or department on campus. We had a total of 268 high schools represented, over 1,500 students have participated over 13 years. This doesn't fully tell the story because you'd think, 1,505 cases of participation, nearly 1,300 individual students. Students have come back for a second, third, even fourth summer. I'm double counting them, triple counting them in this count, counting them as individuals in the second count. So over 13 years. This might seem like 13 years, 1,500, it's about 100 students a year, except it's grown like this. It started with 3 students in 2009, and I think we expect to have 300, maybe 400 students again this summer. The number's never gone down. And the only reason it's gone up is because more and more mentors have signed up to be part of this. These are the high schools that have been part of the program. These are the 268. Don't try to read them. Black means it's a school in California. Blue means it's a school in a different state in the US. And you see the state 2-letter state code after the school name. And red means it's an international school. Italics means it's a private school, fee-based school. Roman means it's a public school. Most of the schools are public schools. There's wonderful gender imbalance in the program. Female identifying students have greatly outnumbered male identifying students. We do a lot of outreach and recruitment, focusing on students of color, focusing on students from historically excluded groups, first generation college aspirants, students from low income families. About a third of our students have faced serious societal obstacles, like listed there. A few years ago, one of the psychology professors, Cam Leeper, and his PhD student, they found they were mentors in SIP, and their research area is what affects students' sense of belonging in STEM. That's their area of research. They were doing this research with high school students, and they said, let's use SIP as our research material. Let's see if participating in programs like these, like this one, helps students. And they found that there is, yes, increase in STEM interest, increase in STEM confidence, and they found that if there's room to grow, then there's more growth. And they identified 2 factors, perhaps obvious. Participating rather than hearing about it was one factor, and feeling like a scientist, feeling recognized as a scientist. Your mentor says, what do you think about this plot? Let's try to make sense of this together. Now, we're going to switch gears from SIP and talk about a wonderful partnership that's been going on for about a year. It's called We Are Startups. This is a collaboration with Professor Annette Lee, who's an adjunct in this department, but she is her regular job is at ASU, Arizona State. And it's a collaboration between Shadow the scientist and her life's work with the native Skywatchers. And this is her beautiful website. We've had a bunch of sessions like this, and I'll describe a little bit more about it. These are beautiful graphics that Annette has put together. The people involved, again, Annette was at St. Cloud when I made the slide. She's now at ASU. Jurita Holbrook, PhD from our department from the mid-90s, I guess. She's in Edinburgh. And Andrea Medina, who's a professor at UC Santa Barbara. She's in Chicano Studies. Jurita is in science, history of science. Annette is an astronomy professor. And Annette introduced me to this concept of, let's see if I can say this, eto-optimum. This is something called two-eyed seeing, where you learn to see through one eye with the strength of indigenous knowledge. and knowing, through the other eye, the strength of Western knowledge, ways of knowing, and to use both eyes for the benefit of all. Another way it's been described is there's sort of a science story, a cultural story, and a personal story that become three strands in a braid. The idea of two-eyed seeing came from the Marshalls, and again, I learned about this from the net. So you can imagine that Shadow the Scientist has been the Western eye in two-eyed seeing in this collaboration. And we've had indigenous students, indigenous defined very broadly by all over the world, and educators who work primarily with university. Some examples here. This is a school in Baltimore. Tavia is the teacher up on the left there. Kate is a teacher at South High School. South High School is located a mile away from George Floyd Square in Minneapolis. Barbara Sarbin is a teacher at the Volcano School of Arts and Sciences. And this is a school located on the slope of Mauna Loa. And none of these kids have been up to Mauna Kea. None of these kids know what goes on up there. But they've been part of Shadow the Scientist now for the better part of a year. We had a wonderful session with compact astronomy educators in the Sonoran Desert in Mexico. This was led by Andrea Medina, where a group of educators took part in a Shadow the Scientist run around the Keck telescope. One more example. This is about medicinal plants. This is led by Andrea again. And these are some slides that connected together. Okay, I think I'm near the end of my slides. I have one more thing to say. And I want to spend how am I doing on time? I have some time for questions after this. Okay, so let's say a little bit about where I'm coming from. Andy, as you know, before the pandemic, I worked whenever I could with the Project Failmate Education at Santa Cruz County Jail. This is a program that Mark Crumhold started. He acquired this when he was a grad student at UC Berkeley, teaching at San Quentin Prison. He brought it to Princeton, to the New Jersey State Prison in Trenton first as a postdoc there. Then he brought it to Santa Cruz. In the Santa Cruz County Jail, we don't teach in the prison. The prison is far away from here. So for practical reasons, so that high school students can, so that our grad students can get out there easily, those who don't have their own transportation, we do this in the jail. It comes with its own challenges. It's called the Project Failmate Education. Involves algebra, I think a little bit of astronomy, and it's mostly been in the men's jail, although I have taught a few classes and others have taught a few classes in the women's jail as well. And when this first came here with Mark, I felt an attraction, I felt a pull, I wanted to do this. And I want to say why. I want to say why, where I'm coming from with this. So I decided to do this because of my history. I had never, like many of you, I'd never seen the inside of a jail. Okay, I'd never seen one, but I had a desire to see the inside of a jail. It wasn't like a morbid attraction for this. I wanted to see this because of my personal history. My father, who would have been 96 8 days from now, so March 19th, he would have turned 96. As a teenager, as a 16-year-old, my father was a political prisoner at a time in India when there was a lot of political turmoil. India was trying to break the shackles of the British Empire, British rule. So as a 16-year-old, he got thrown into prison. He was tortured for the better part of 18 months, nearly died, and managed to survive that. But when that happens, you live with the scars for the rest of your life. Your family. It's hard for the family to completely forget those scars. My father kept his scars well hidden somehow. My mother grew up with a whole other set of scars, which had to do with her skin color, curly hair, and her scars were more visible because of who she was. Anyway, yesterday was my mother's 90th birthday. She would have been 90. So I thought I would put up a couple of portraits I did of them various times. And that's really where I'm coming from. I'll stop here. These are my slides. And take questions. And I'd love for you to get involved. All right.
I wanted to add, Raja, if you could talk a little bit more when you were talking about the science internship program, which I'm very involved in. If you could talk about who the mentors for that program are and how they can become involved, just so that the folks in the room might
Yeah.
know.
Most of the mentors in the science internship program are PhD students around campus. Because we've been online in 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, we've had occasional mentors who are not at UCSC anymore, or perhaps have never been at UCSC, but have a strong connection to UCSC. We have some postdocs who've taken part. We have research staff in various departments. You know, for example, in our department, Carl Westfall was a mentor one summer. Faculty will occasionally be mentors, and we pay our mentors. It's a fee-based program. We pay mentors. Is that what you wanted me to say?
I wanted all the mentors, potential prospective mentors in the room to know that this is a summer funding opportunity to have high school students involved in your research.
So I presented this yesterday to Paul, Richard, Laurie, etc. SIP pays something like, the exact figure now, something like 400,000, yeah, close to that. Little more than that in mentor stipends every summer to PhD students around campus. That's one reason, if you're not going to be 100% GSR over the summer, that might be one reason to boost your summer earnings. That's one reason that attracts mentors to our program. But the other reason is the work we expect of the mentors is to train high school students to work on their own research. So it's not disjoint from the researcher's journey over the summer. You know, it's closely allied to their PhD thesis or whatever research they're working on at that time. And of course, the third thing is there's a professional development piece to it. As a grad student, you might find yourself where you're at the bottom of the food chain, and people have greater oversight of the project, are telling you what piece to work on, and you don't. This forces you to have some oversight, project management, teaching, mentoring, brings that into the mix as well. Those are the value propositions for a mentor. Other questions, I guess, from Zoom as well. Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
You were talking about your program where people observe you observing. Do you interact with them while you're observing, or are you busy and they're just off?
It's a bit of both. It depends on where you are, right? So when we did it on last Friday, we started the session a little bit before 12-degree twilight. So we deliberately started it when the Keck folks were doing a Myra. They were aligning the telescope, and because of the way JWST has been in the news, people immediately understood what was going on there, right? And so we didn't have to say very much. They were watching this happen. They watched a star become 36 images from the 36 segments of the Keck telescope. And then, because it was still 12-degree twilight, sky wasn't completely dark, we went after a few bright stars. So there was a lot of activity. We were moving from one target to the next, looking at a bright star spectrum. And then after about 45 minutes of this, we settled into a series of 5 20-minute exposures where we didn't have to do anything for that. So that's when we started to look up, started to be looked up from our work. And we said, okay, this is what the different controls are. So it's a bit of both. There's the first bit where people happen to just be watching us do stuff. And then it was a 90-minute segment. So the first 45 minutes, they were mostly watching us do stuff. Us, meaning the science team, the observatory folks. The remaining 45 minutes, we were doing a lot of explanation.
I see. So it's not all night, 90 minutes.
Yeah, we set how long we want. And then we can either truncate, cut off that Zoom call and join the Keck observatory link. That's typically how we've been doing it, not all night.
So have you experimented with having a narrator who's not part of the?
Yeah.
the organization?
Yeah, so for example, Svea Hernandez is a postdoc at, no, she's a staff member in Baltimore Space Telescope. So she brought in high schools from Monterrey, Mexico, where she had been a high school student. She did the entire narration in Spanish. Andrea did this for the Compact Astronomers in Spanish. So it helps to have a person who's just dedicated to speaking about this, especially if it's someone who understands the science, or part of the science. So it helps if you have more than one person on the science team, a couple of people communicating with the observatory staff. You know, we make it clear that that is sacrosanct. The communication with the observatory staff and the telescope is of primary importance. And then when we have gaps, we'll talk to you. But if you have multiple people and one person is using a chat, the other people are using the audio. We've even had 2 Zoom calls going, like one on my phone, one on my laptop. I have one with the official tech folks, official link, and then I have the other UCS link. People have, you know, this has been going on since 6th of November 2020, so 15, 16 months now. And we're evolving. We're setting up a website where we train people to do this if they want to do it. It doesn't take much training, but these little things like this, we want to make sure the observatory has a heads up. We record these sessions, so we want to make sure that if the observatory staff don't want to get on this public Zoom call, they don't need to ever. They can stay on the official link. So there are little things like that. The observatories, the Mauna Kea Observatory directors, they have a group of directors who work together. They're very enthusiastic about this. But we want to work out some of these things. And Subaru was in the news a lot because of Don't Look Up. Yeah. So we got a lot of press. We did some Shadow of the Scientist one night on Subaru. We got so much press because of this. No one on our team looked like Jennifer Lawrence. No one on our team looked like who else was on there. I'm sorry.
I said, don't put yourself.
Don't put myself down. I don't look like Jennifer Lawrence. I don't look like her advisor either. But no, we got a lot of press because of that. Other questions? Anyone on Zoom? Let's see. I want to see who's on Zoom actually, because I want to introduce a few people. I want to stop sharing my screen. All right. I see Gio, who set up the R and computational biology. I see many SIP mentors on the call, of course. Sandy, Martin Gaskell, I see Pran. Can I put any of you on the spot here? I saw Knowledge. I see Noku. Noku is a high school student from Zimbabwe who took part in the last summer's program. Noku and Ru both took part in the program. They've been working with Nia and me. I see Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Knowledge, is it okay if I put you on the spot if you wanted to say a little bit about our work together? Knowledge Chikundi runs the Africa Science Busters Festival. I got connected to him a year and a half, maybe 2.5 years ago. And his network of students in Central Africa have been fantastic participants in Shadow the Scientist and SIP in the Python tutorial. Knowledge, are you ready to say a few words? You're muted.
Yeah, sure, Raja. Thank you so much for all you are doing to promote science, especially here, since we got connected in 2020. So since 2020, after your lecture in the Africa Science Baskers Festival, what followed was the participation of 2 students, 2 girls, for the first time from Zimbabwe, participating in SIP. And that experience changed them. They now have more fire to want to inspire more young people here in Zimbabwe in science, especially astronomy. And we are seeing them working hard in their company. So they started a company called Junior Space Explorers, and they are trying their best to inspire other young people. So yes, thank you for all that, and we hope to. Also, so something that really happened last year, the Shadow the Scientist program, because so far we have had schools from Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe participating in the Shadow the Scientist program, and we hope to have more schools participating in that program this year. So in the next coming months, I'll be checking with you to see the sessions our students can join. So thank you for all the work, Raja, and your team. We really appreciate.
Knowledge, thank you. So what Knowledge is describing is our screen share, my VNC and screen share has been in school auditoriums in Africa. And the time difference most of the time hurts us. Here, the time difference helps us. We poor sods, astronomers have to stay up in the middle of the night. These kids, they could be skipping boring classes at school and doing this. This is what's been going on. Let me see who else is on here. But I mean, I'll take other questions if there are questions from the peanut gallery. David, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much, Raja. I was curious, can you just give us a sense of the funding of all your many programs? For example, you could say 1/3 come from corporate, 1/3 come from private, 1/3 come from the participants' families. I just don't have a sense of that among your many programs. Just very roughly, you don't have to do any calculations or anything.
So the SIP program is beautifully balanced funding-wise. Its budget is about, in an in-person year, its budget is about 1.4 million a year. In an online year, like 2021, it was about 1.1. Of that, close to 900,000 come from program fees, and the remaining 200,000 come from corporate donations. Google gives us 75K each year. That's a large fraction of that 200,000. We have other foundations like Amazon Web Services gives us money every year. Individuals, including individuals from Google, give us money. And so that's the rough breakdown. And we spend all of that money. It's a nonprofit. So we spend as much as we bring in on mentor stipends, staff support, events. That's for SIP. Rising Simons is looking to fund Shadow the Scientists. We are in negotiations with them, or not discussion with them. They've actually asked us to up our budget initially to include an evaluator to see the impact of this program. They're funding We Are Stardust for Annette. That money is going to go directly to Arizona State or native Skywatchers. That'll be, we think, something like 50K a year and close to 250 for a year for Shadow the Scientists. And the main discussion that's going on is whether they can give us that level for 3 years or a leaner budget for 5 years. That's the discussion. So they've recently taken interest in it as of last November, and we've been in negotiations or discussion, and they've been helping us shape the proposals. But those are the two main funded pieces. We have about 150K in an individual, a couple of gifts for the CrEST, the rest of the CrEST program. A lot of the other activities are volunteer or small stipends paid to mentors, so they're not very expensive or intensive financially.
It's good for the young people to have some sense of how much support you get from the funding side, because that's a huge effort. So kudos to you, Raja, for successfully.
My dad ran an export company, and he really wanted me to follow in his footsteps, and I hated it. One summer I worked for him, I hated managing a business, and here I find myself managing a different kind of business.
Was your version of SIP?
My version of SIP, yeah. What was his version of SIP? It was jute export, is what he did. And I hated it, absolutely.
It's good to find that out when you're in high school.
Yeah. So Noku on the call here is one of the high school students from Zimbabwe. Nia and I have been working with Noku and Drew and Knowledge on their do-it-yourself telescope project. Fran just got into the PhD program in EPS across the plaza here. She's a master's student in EPS. Fran, if you can, I don't know if you're able to hear me or if you want to turn on video, I'd love to hear from you. Fran runs a 25,000 program with a following of 25,000. It's called Astronomy Outreach of Kosovo. Where did you go?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Raja and everyone. Great talk. Shadow, the scientist, is one of my favorite things. And when I got to know Raja, which was not that long ago, last year, he told me about this, and I immediately, it was a really cool idea, and I wanted to share it with as many people as I could in my network, not only over, in Eastern Europe, in Kosovo, but also all over the world with all the people that I've been working for the past few years. And it's been amazing. There's been like a lot of interest from people because not every day we get to see astronomers working from Keck or Lick Observatory or like some of the largest telescopes. It's been really exciting, and I'm fully supporting this. Really good job, Raja.
Fran and Martin know each other somehow. I don't know how, but they know each other. And then let me see if Gio is on his phone. Gio, are you? Thanks, Fran. Thanks so much. And Gio, if you have a moment to, so we can see you. Gio was a PhD student in biomolecular engineering at Santa Cruz. He's now a postdoc at Chicago. He's originally from Brazil. He's been running his Recom Bio, which is teaching R in the context of computational biology. He's been teaching it in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So Gio has been a tremendous force as well.
Hello, Raja. Hi, everybody. So
Hi.
Hi. I've been a mentor at SEEP for 7 years. I was a PhD student at UC Santa Cruz, and I finished my PhD about 2 years ago. And as I always tell Raja, SEEP is one of the programs that really motivated me to continue engaged in science, and because I had the opportunity to see the work and the success of these young scientists, and really that is something that really motivates me. So that's part of the reasons why we talked about making these bioinformatics tutorials available for a broader audience. Students, high school students, graduate students, and sometimes undergraduate students, and sometimes graduate students that sometimes do not have a lot of coding experience. So that's one of the projects that I'm working on right now. I have been working with partners in the US, some partners in Mexico, and some partners in Brazil to teach basically introduction to computational biology to these audiences that we spoke. So it's been really a pleasure and an honor to work with Raja and to work with SEEP.
Thank you, Gio. Thank you very much. We're at the end of our hour, and I wanted to see if anyone wanted to, if there are any other questions. I'm happy to hang around a little bit longer and take questions. But thank you all for coming, and in the lead up to finals week. So thank you for spending an hour here. Happy to talk more with people. Thank you for organizing this.